and welcome into the fourth episode of the Roll the Tape podcast. I'm your host, Jackson White, alongside
Aiden McNally
and J.O. McKissick.
And now let's roll the tape. The day we're recording this is Tuesday, October 24th, just after Week 7 football. Let's get right into it. The Jacksonville Jaguars took on the New Orleans Saints on Thursday Night Football. The Jaguars prevail, get a big victory. Lawrence finishes with 204 yards and a touchdown. The Jags are now 5-2, the Saints falling to 3-4. Going to Sunday, Falcons versus Buccaneers, kind of an interesting one. And this one, Bijan Robinson only had one rush for 3 yards, as just kind of question marks as he did not play. They said he had a headache. I don't know. We'll talk about it later. Falcons win 16-13 over the Bucs. The Falcons over 500, 4-3. They lead their division. Bucs fall to 3-3. Moving along now, the Raiders versus the Bears. The Bears, the team starting their backup quarterback, win the game 32-12. Brian Hoyer also got the start for the Raiders, and he threw 2 interceptions in this one. And the Bears get a big victory by Devonta Foreman, 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had one through the air as well. Excuse me. Moving along, Colts versus Browns, one of the most exciting games of this Sunday's matchups. The Browns pull off the victory 39-38. Colts get screwed by the refs late. Browns 4-2. Colts now below 500 at 3-4. Deshaun Watson only threw 5 passes, throwing an interception and 5 yards. And the Colts, Gardner Minshew played well, 302 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Also ran it in for 2. Jonathan Taylor back with a touchdown, 75 yards on the ground, over 120 yards total. Colts do lose. Browns pick up the victory, now 4-2. Moving along, Commanders versus the Giants. The Giants pick up their second victory of the year, 14-7. The Commanders fall to 3-4 on the season. Tyrod Taylor, 2 touchdowns in his second consecutive start, 279 passing for him. Barkley had 77 on the ground. Sam Howell had an interception, no touchdowns, 249 for himself. And the Giants 2-5, but Tyrod Taylor could be possibly the starter going forward if they continue to win. Moving along to should have been a good game, but didn't turn out to be, Ravens versus Lions. Ravens come out in dominant fashion, score 14 points in the first quarter, 14 points in the second quarter, get up 28-0, end up winning 38-6. Lamar Jackson had himself a day, 357 passing, 3 touchdowns, had a touchdown on the ground as well. The Lions struggle. A team that had one of the most high-powering offenses only gets held to 6 points. Gibbs finally got a big day, 68 yards rushing, a touchdown. Jared Goff couldn't find the end zone, threw an interception. Ravens over the Lions. Ravens now 5-2. Lions 5-2 as well. Moving along to an upset, Patriots versus Bills. Patriots pull off the victory in a late game-winning touchdown. 29-25. Patriots now 2-5. The Bills fall to 4-3. Mac Jones actually had himself a solid day. 25 for 30 passing, 272, and 2 touchdowns passing. Ezekiel Elliott found the end zone as well, rushing the ball for the Bills. Josh Allen, 265, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Also ran one in, but the Patriots prevail and win 29-25. Moving along, Seahawks versus Cardinals. Joshua Dobbs got the start for the Cardinals as Kyler Murray is not yet ready, even though he is off IR. Geno Smith looks good, 219, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Kenneth Walker showing he is an elite running back, 105 yards. And Jake Bobo, a name you probably have never heard before, amazing catch in the end zone. Seahawks win 20-10. The Hawks 4-2 now. The Cardinals fall to 1-6. Moving along, Steelers versus Rams. And the Steelers pull off victory, 24-17. The Steelers are surprisingly 4-2. The Rams now 3-4. Kenny Pickett, no touchdowns on the day, 230 passing. Pickett did run one in as well. Najee Harris had a touchdown with Jalen Warren as well. For the Rams, Stafford a touchdown and an interception. Obviously, having a running back by committee. Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson both played in this one, both having over 60 yards. Puka Nacua shows that he is still an elite receiver, having 152, 4 yards receiving. Cooper Kupp kind of slowed down, 2 receptions, 29 yards. Rams fall to 3-4. Steelers now 4-2 as they pick up the victory. Moving along, Chiefs versus Chargers. Chiefs win this one 31-17. They're now 6-1. And the Chargers now 2-4. Mahomes had himself a career day. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 424 yards passing. Travis Kelce with Taylor Swift in the stands, 179 yards receiving, a touchdown on 12 receptions. Chiefs win big, 31-17. Moving along, Broncos versus Packers, a low-scoring game. Broncos pull out the victory, 19-17. Russell Wilson, 194 and a touchdown. And for the Packers, Jordan Love, 1 interception, 2 touchdowns, 180 passing. Packers now 2-4. The Broncos now 2-5. Broncos win. Eagles versus Dolphins, Sunday Night Football, a game that honestly was not as close as people thought. Eagles win 31-17. The Eagles now 6-1. Dolphins fall to 5-2. Jalen Hurts, 279, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. DeAndre, I should say, 62 yards rushing. For the Dolphins, Tua had a touchdown and an interception, 216 passing. Mostert had 45 yards on the ground, and Tyreek Hill had 88 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Waddle did not find the end zone, but had 63 yards through the air. Moving along to Monday Night Football, and the Minnesota Vikings taking on the San Francisco 49ers, and the Vikings pulling off the upset victory 22-17. Kirk Cousins, 378 passing, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And for the 49ers, Brock Purdy throws 2 interceptions, 1 to seal it, 272, and 1 touchdown for Purdy. McCaffrey finds the end zone twice, with 45 yards on the ground, 51 through the air. And now the 49ers have lost 2 straight after starting 5-0. They're now 5-2. The Vikings on a little bit of a hill. They're climbing up 3-4 on the season. That's going to wrap up all of the NFL games in the past week 7. Now I would now like to welcome in Jaden and Aiden. And let's just go right into them. The Detroit Lions, a team that has one of the highest powering offenses in the league, only being held to 6 points versus the Ravens. And thoughts on this one?
It was, I think I speak for everyone whenever I say this was the biggest surprise of the week. This is a game that we thought this would go down to the wire. And then I look on my phone, check fantasy, what's going on in the games. This game's 28-0 at half. I'm thinking to myself, what's happening? This is a Lions team that you could make the argument that this is the best team in the league going into Week 7, and then they go into Baltimore and absolutely screw it all up. They didn't score in the first half, and they barely even scored in the whole game.
Yeah, they had 6 points in the fourth quarter. It was already a blowout. And the Ravens, they came out as fire. Lamar Jackson looked really good. And they came out, and the Lions just looked stale. They're a team that should be one of the most high-powering offenses, and 6 points is not the Lions.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a win that the Ravens leap off of and start to build momentum, because their defense played great, offense played even greater, and Lamar Jackson was on point. He lost a fumble at some point during the game, but other than that, everything went off without a hitch. Mark Andrews was catching balls, Zay Flowers was catching balls, and this offense looks very, very smooth right now. And I don't know if there's any team in the AFC North that's competing with them for that top spot.
Yeah, and the name that we should highlight is Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews hasn't really had the season everyone was expecting him to have so far. Hasn't put up, these top 5 tight end numbers like we were expecting him to have this year. But he goes out, catches 2 touchdowns on National Tight End Day, and I think he was probably the X factor for the Ravens, especially on offense.
The Ravens are a team that's 5-2, obviously above their division, top of the division of the AFC North. They're a team that's very good, and they're a team that's lost some games they probably shouldn't have lost. So the Ravens, I think they're one of the best teams in the AFC. Lamar Jackson's rolling. They're finally getting a little bit of a running game. Gus Edwards and Justin Hill both had a combined 100 yards. Odell Beckham Jr. is finally back in the lineup, almost had 50 yards in this one. Zay Flowers is finally emerging as a top receiver in that offense. The Ravens are rolling. And, if you're in the AFC right now, I think your top 2 teams are the Ravens and the Chiefs. You want to look at the Dolphins, and we'll get to that in just a second. But the Ravens and the Chiefs, I'd say, are my 2 top dogs in the AFC right now.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like if you have Patrick Mahomes, you're always going to compete. His wide receiver 1 is
Rashee
Rice, McCole Hardman now. But anyway, yeah, I feel like the Ravens are definitely a team that that's underlooked. And you say that the Ravens and the Chiefs are top two. I would agree. I feel like Lamar Jackson is starting to get that mojo back. He played an excellent game. Only missed 6 passes in 27 attempts. He's always been looked at as a rusher, and we're kind of seeing him evolve as a passer too. He played a great game through the air, and I feel like the best is still yet to come for this Ravens team.
Yeah, me too.
So moving along now, the Miami Dolphins, a team that everyone would say, going into this season, a very talented offense, of course. They got better defensively, I might say. Obviously, additions of Jalen Ramsey hasn't played yet, but will play soon. But you look at it, and they're a team that sits at 5-2. And 5-2 through the first 7 games is an excellent record. But let's just go and look through their first 7 games.
Yikes.
And they have not played really tough competition. Every single good team they've played so far, they've lost to. Besides, obviously, let's just go through. Week 1, they beat the Chargers by 2. Okay, it's a good win. Chargers, even though their record is 2-4, they're a solid team. You beat the Patriots 24-17. The Patriots, I don't think they're that good. You should win that game. You destroy the Broncos. The Broncos' defense is absolutely terrible. Obviously, 70 points. You lose to the Bills, and by a lot, 48-20. That's a blowout. You beat the Giants, a team that's not good at all. You beat the Panthers. Haven't won a game yet, and then you lose to the Eagles. And, obviously 5-2 looks really good on paper. But this Dolphins team has yet to beat a good team. And, obviously, next week they play the Patriots, which is a team I still don't think is that good. And then they have another chance to do it versus the Chiefs just 2 weeks from now. So, are the Dolphins legit contenders, or are they fake?
I think they're still contenders just because of how high-powered that offense is. Even though I know the past 2 games that they've lost have looked bad. Tua hasn't been on point in those 2 games against top-tier defenses. But I still think with Mike McDaniels and that scheme that they run, they can still put up points. And the defense is solid enough to where they can get stops. I think it's just they have to put it together more against these great teams. They can't just go out firing like they have been against these lower-tier teams where they won and just expect every long pass to go for a touchdown. Because these teams are built different than a Carolina Panthers. So you gotta adjust a little bit and figure out a game plan to beat these better defenses.
It's week 7. We've seen what the Dolphins can do. We know this offense is probably the best offense in the league alongside the Lions. Maybe not after that blowout, but anyway, back to the Dolphins. They're winning the games they're supposed to win, and they're losing the games they're supposed to lose. Is it crazy to call them contenders, given the teams they've lost to and beat? I would still say they're contenders. It's just they need to start showing signs of being able to contend with good teams, because the 2 teams they have played this season, they've gotten rolled. You look back at that Bills game, they lost by 4 touchdowns. You look back at the Eagles game. The Eagles offense picked apart this Dolphins defense. And it really makes you wonder, will the Dolphins be able to contend with a good playoff team, an average playoff team, or will they, fall under pressure to those big teams and only beat the bad teams? Because come playoff time, if they're still playing like this, they won't compete for a Super Bowl, given their performances against good teams.
Yeah, it really just comes down to that. Right now, it's slated the Dolphins are the 2nd seed in the AFC. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, they have a few tests in the season. It's a long season, so ultimately we'll see. Moving along to last night, Monday Night Football. Monday Night Football had 2 teams a team that everyone thinks is the favorite to win it all, you could say. And then a team that people expected to be the top of their division this year, or close to it, and a team that should be way better than their record shows. The San Francisco 49ers taking on the Minnesota Vikings last night on Monday Night Football. Obviously, this is going to be posted on Thursday, so it will be a few nights from now. But from when you hear this, but to us, it's last night, just for reference. But 22-17 was your final score. Obviously, the Vikings, they played well. Offensively, they were rolling. Even though 22 points doesn't look like a lot. Kirk Cousins, 378 passing, 2 touchdowns, and interception. And after the game, he had a necklace on, and it said top 10. And the real question of the day after the Vikings beat the 49ers is Kirk Cousins top 10.
No.
I don't think so either.
I feel like it's clear cut. I feel like revisiting our Jared Goff argument a couple episodes ago. If we don't have Jared Goff top 10, then I don't think we have Kirk Cousins top 10. Kirk Cousins is still 3-4. I remember last season they went 12-4 or 12-5, and I think I saw something where in one-score games they went like 8-0 or something, and this is a team last year that was 12-5, but easily could have finished with 6-7 wins. And I think this year, those one-score games, they're losing those one-score games, and it's showing. Kirk Cousins is good. He's definitely a top half quarterback. He is top 16. Will he get you to the playoffs at this point in the season, being down 3-4 and the Lions in your division? I don't think he can. And a top 10 quarterback in the league should be able to lead this team to the playoffs, and I don't know. I don't think Kirk Cousins has the ability to do that.
One thing I will say is Kirk Cousins is top of the league in passing yards, which I'll give him that. He is top of the league in passing yards, and he doesn't have many interceptions. I think he has how many? 4? 5, which isn't. What is it? 7 weeks into the season. That's not terrible, but it's about one per game almost. Yeah. So it's kind of just like I still wouldn't put him above guys like Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, guys like that. I still wouldn't put him. Joe Burrow. Like I see people trying to make the argument that he's better than Justin Herbert. If Justin Herbert is top 10 at 2-4, why can't Kirk Cousins be top 10 at 3-4? So I can see the argument there, but I still think that Justin Herbert's still better than Kirk Cousins.
If you look at the statistics, right? Kirk Cousins is one of 3 quarterbacks to pass for 2,000 yards so far this season. He leads the league in passing touchdowns with 16, and he has 5 interceptions. His completion percentage is about 69%. Statistically, he's top 5, but that's statistically, not just in the
eye test. Yeah,
the eye test. Is Kirk Cousins top 5? I think he's not top 5, top 10. I think he's fringe. Meaning,
I think he's right up there with Jared Goff.
I think he is right up. Yeah, I would say that's an equal comparison. But is Kirk Cousins better than Tua Tagovailoa?
No.
Is Kirk Cousins better than obviously Jared Goff?
No. It's close, but no.
Is Kirk Cousins better than Trevor Lawrence?
Actually, I think Kirk Cousins could be better than Jared Goff.
Well, statistically, yes.
I think even on the eye test, he could be better than Jared Goff.
Here's the thing with the passing stats with Kirk Cousins. His team is so bad, and his defense is so bad that
his defense,
the Vikings is all the Vikings.
The defense showed up last night.
No, I know they did.
They have the worst rushing offense in the league, so all they can do is pass.
All they could do is pass. But not only that, the defense played great last night, but this Vikings defense is so bad that the Vikings always find themselves passing out of deficits. And I feel like that if Kirk Cousins is any quarterback in those scenarios are going to put up stats because they're getting more attempts.
Well, obviously the Vikings are a team that has the most turnovers in the league. They fumble a lot. Their running backs fumble a lot. They struggle in the running game, and that's going to lead to, obviously, Cousins, like you said, having to throw a lot, which could cause inflation to stats. But I guess ultimately time will tell. If Kirk Cousins can pull the Vikings out of this situation that they're in right now, get them back to a over 500 record, get them into the playoffs, win a playoff game, I think we could revisit this conversation as top 10. Right now, no. I think he has a lot to prove, and there's a reason the Vikings aren't re-signing him. He's going to be an open free agent next year, which is going to be something to monitor and watch. But we will ultimately, time will tell. But going to the other team on the other side of that game, the San Francisco 49ers, a team that started off 5-0, a team that we already said crowned the NFL champions of the league just a few episodes ago. They're now 5-2, and they've lost 2 straight. What's going on with the San Francisco 49ers?
To be honest, I don't know.
I don't think it's Purdy. I still think
Purdy played bad.
Purdy played bad. Purdy probably played his worst game of the season. And I don't know, that Browns game was kind of bad too. But he still didn't have Deebo Samuel, which still isn't an excuse.
Yeah.
It's still not an excuse with how high Christian McCaffrey was back. He still had Ayuk, still had George Kittle. Still has the best offensive one of the best offensive lines in the league. I mean, it's still not an excuse just because you lost your best receiver to go out there and stink it up like he did.
Yeah.
I mean, that last interception was bad.
Yeah, that was just kind of a oh well.
That was a bad interception.
Obviously, you look at the stats for Purdy. He's 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That's not bad. McCaffrey's rolling. He has 8 touchdowns rushing. He has 3 receiving. So, yeah. So, I mean, he already has over 10 touchdowns in the year. This team isn't bad, but they've had a little bit of issues of late. And will they figure it out? If there's any team that's going to figure it out, it's the Niners. I still say they're the favorite to me to win it right now because that team is absolutely loaded. And they, I mean, the Eagles obviously trading for a Titan safety, a buyer too. So, I mean, that's another team in the NFC that's going to be, I think it's going to be Niners, Eagles again in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah,
I agree.
But I would say the Niners probably still my favorite, depending how they do for the remainder of the season. I mean, if you take a look at their schedule and the remaining games, they play Cincinnati next week, and we'll talk about that later in the show, but that's a game of the week. I mean, Cincinnati's a team that's coming off a bye and a team that's finally starting to get it rolling after a really tough start. And then they have their bye, and then they play Jacksonville, another team that's 5-2 right now. Obviously, I think the Niners are way better than the Jacksonville, but I mean, they still have tough teams. I mean, they play Seattle week 12. They play week 13 Philadelphia. They play Seattle week 14 again. They play Baltimore week 16. And they play the Rams at week 18. I mean, they play some tough teams. And obviously, I think this team's going to make the playoffs, and of course. But, I mean, offensively, they've scored 17 in their last 2. They lost to the Browns, and they should have done that. Purdy played way better than he did versus the Browns versus the Vikings. And I don't think it's all on Purdy that they lost to Minnesota. But Purdy has to play better, and teams are starting to figure him out.
One thing we have learned about Purdy these last couple weeks is he cannot perform under pressure. If his defense, if as stacked as this defense is, if this defense is not performing up to their standard in Purdy, the game's relying on Purdy to bring them out and to score points, he can't do it. Purdy can't. My main point is Purdy can't win a shootout. He can't go out there on a game-winning drive. The past 2 weeks, we've seen Purdy attempting a game-winning drive, and it's ended horribly.
Well, okay, except for the Browns one. The Browns one's not on him.
The Browns one wasn't on him. But, I mean, still, in that Browns game, the whole game they were under pressure, really, and he was, 11 for 26, 40% completion percentage?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just unacceptable. If the 49ers are going to be favorites and Purdy is going to be in these close games, you can't be doing that.
I think he did show up at the end, though, to get them in field goal range.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But that whole game was just
I can agree with you. The rest of that game was terrible for him, but at least he showed up final drive of that last game to put them in field goal range. Jake Moody just missed the kick.
I agree, yeah.
I mean, yeah, well, ultimately time will tell with this Niners team. I think they'll figure it out. But moving along now to another sport, a sport that when you are listening to this will already be underway, but it starts tonight, Tuesday, October 24th. The NBA season is officially back. And so, well, I think we need to get our early season predictions out. So, let's just get right into it. We're going to go down, and we're going to go 1 through 15 on who we think is the top, obviously. We'll go 1 through 10, obviously the playoff teams, and then obviously the bottom teams. We're going to go 1 through 15, East and West. We're going to start it with the Eastern Conference, and I'm going to have the Celtics at 1.
I agree. I feel like the Bucks, the Heat, the Cavs, they're all good, but this Celtics roster is one of the deepest rosters we've seen in a long time. I feel like they're the clear one.
I also have Celtics at 1. I think their team is a little deeper than the Bucks. But the Bucks are right there with them. I can see interchangeable 1 and 2, but I do have the Celtics winning.
Now moving to number 2 in the Eastern Conference, I have the Milwaukee Bucks, a team that added Damian Lillard, and obviously Giannis just signing an extension just a few days ago. So the Bucks, a really solid team. I'm going to have them at 2.
I have them at 2 as well.
I have them at 2 as well. And I think after this number 2 is when we all start to differentiate.
Things are a little different.
It gets a little
Things
different.
get a little different, yeah.
All right, so moving across now to number 3, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that I think is just getting better and better. They have star players across the board. Donovan Mitchell obviously leading the team. Evan Mobley going to hopefully step up and make some interesting things as well. So I have the Cavs at 3.
I have the Heat at 3. I feel like a team led by Jimmy Butler, one of the best veterans in the league. Tyler Hero's coming back. Bam Adebayo's coming back. This is a deep team, and I feel like this team has, even talking back to the 2020 ring when they played the Lakers, this was a team that nobody thought would make it that far, and their roster isn't like super impressive. They don't really have any superstars, but they always compete, and so I feel like you can't really count them out at this point. They've proved themselves.
And my 3, I have the Sixers. Every year,
Whoa.
it's the same with the Sixers. They're going to be a top 3, 4, 5 seed, lose in the second round to Giannis or the Heat. But I still think that the Sixers, unless James Harden gets traded, which it might happen, or he just doesn't play at all, I think Joel Embiid and that Sixers team is still loaded, and that they'll still be number 3.
Okay, number 4 is probably my first really shakeup, you could say. I'm going to say the Indiana Pacers are going to finish with home court advantage in the playoffs. I'm going to say the Pacers at 4. The Pacers are a team that obviously is led by Tyrese Halliburton, coming off an extension in the offseason. Halliburton's looking to get better. Benedict Mathurin, I think, is going to take a next step. Now in a starting role for them, Miles Turner is a guy who averaged 18 and 8 last season, one of the best defenders in the league. They added a lot of depth. They added a lot of players. Obi Toppin, a guy who I think is going to take a big jump for them. I think the Indiana Pacers are a very good team, and I'm going to put them at 4.
For my 4, I'm going to have the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a team, in my opinion, from starting lineup, point guard to center, I think they might have the best starting lineup in the league. You have Darius Garland, obviously a proven point guard. Donovan Mitchell, been proven for years. Evan Mobley, he can do literally everything on the court. Jarrett Allen, one of the best rim protectors in the league. I mean, the list goes on. They have a deep roster. I have them at 4, but I don't know. I feel like this team might be able to finish 2, 3.
I also have the Cavs at 4. Wait, hold on, my bad. Where's mine? I do have the Cavs at 4, my bad. Technical difficulties, y'all. But same thing that Aiden just said. I think the Cavs team is definitely deep. I do think they have one of the best starting fives, 1 through 5. In the NBA. I mean, that's the defense is there, offense is there because of D. Mitch, and then you have the bench scoring with Karis LeVert and guys like that. So I think that the Cavs will make a run in this playoffs.
And my 5 seed is going to be the Philadelphia 76ers. And obviously this is pending on a James Harden trade. Will he get traded? We'll see. But the 76ers are a team that has the reigning, defending MVP, Joel Embiid, and a team that hasn't made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I really like the 76ers. They changed head coaches this offseason. Nick Nurse now over there in Philadelphia. So, they're a solid team, yeah, but I just didn't see much improvement from them in the offseason. I think Tyrese Maxey is going to take a really big step for them as well, but ultimately time will tell. But I have the 76ers
Wrong sport.
at the 5 seed.
At my 5 seed, I will have the Pacers. I mean, this is a team that's been rebuilding for, a year or two now. They've gotten their future in Benedict Mathurin and Tyrese Halliburton. I feel like you could argue that's probably the best young front court in the league. Not the best front court, but the best young front court for years to come. Tyrese will take a big leap. Benedict Mathurin will take a big leap. Obi Toppin, as you said, will take a big leap. Obviously, Miles Turner, he's been proven for almost a decade to be dominant in the paint and on offense, too, around the perimeter. I don't know. This is a sleeper team. They have a deep bench, obviously re-signing Aaron Nesmith, and they have guys, or was it Nesmith?
It was Nesmith.
Okay. Yeah. I couldn't remember if it was Nesmith or Nemhard, but either way, they have a deep team. I feel like they could probably get around 50 wins this year.
And for my number 5, I have the Miami Heat. Now, every year Miami is going to sneak in. They're going to get into the playoffs every year. It doesn't matter if they sneak in or if they're a top 5 seed. And they're going to make a run because Jimmy Butler's that guy. Every year in the playoffs, every year in the regular season, it always seems like, Jimmy Butler's falling off. He's only averaging 20 points. And then all of a sudden, playoffs come around, he's averaging 30, leading his team to wins. So I think that the Heat get in there at 5 because they have a good culture, they have a good roster, and Eric Spoelstra Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the league still to this day. So I still think that the Heat are top 5.
My 6th seed is going to be the Miami Heat. Like you said, I put them a little bit lower. Obviously, this Miami Heat team, I think, got worse this offseason. They kind of went all in for Damian Lillard, and Damian Lillard not on the Miami Heat. I think Tyler Hero is going to take a little bit of a jump. I could see him improving. This Heat team could flex from the 2nd seed all the way down to the 10th seed.
I agree,
they really could. They're a team that doesn't really care about the regular season. That could hurt them and hinder them. Ultimately, we'll see. I have the Heat at 6.
For my 6, I will have the Sixers. New head coach. Obviously, they've moved on from Rivers, which is probably the best offseason move they made this offseason. Nick Nurse comes into Philadelphia. The only problem I have with the Sixers is that they're always just inconsistent every year. They play well in the regular season, but in the playoffs, for some reason, it just never goes their way. Obviously, it was James Harden's hamstring injury that really brought them down. And hamstring injuries tend to, bother you for a little bit. If he didn't get that patched up this offseason, and if that keeps nagging for the rest of the season, it'll obviously hurt them. He was the leader in assists last year, assists per game, maybe. Maybe that's wrong.
He was, yeah.
He was, okay. Reigning MVP Joel Embiid, but I don't know. They're always inconsistent. I can never trust them, so that's why I have them at 6.
For my number 6, I have my Indiana Pacers. Now, I think they can be anywhere from 6 to 4, even to 3 if the season goes right. But I'm going to play it safe and put them at 6 here. I think they're still a 45 to 50 win team. Tyrese Halliburton, second best point guard in the East, easily. And I think he has an all-NBA type season this year. I don't know if he'll make the all-NBA team, but I think that he will be in question to get in. And then, obviously, Miles Turner said he was a top 5 center in the league. So he's going to have to prove that. I don't think he's a top 5 center right now. He's top 10, but top 5, he's going to have to prove that. And with young guys like Benedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, and the second best shooter in the league, Buddy Hield. I mean, this team is deep. 1 through 15. I think they'll make some noise that people aren't expecting.
I mean, while we're on the topic of the Pacers here, other than Dame, if you think about it, is Tyrese the best point guard in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah.
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 You think so?
I think he's better than Drew Holiday. I think he's better than Trae Young, Jalen Brunson, Darius Garland, LaMelo.
Those are a lot of tough names, though.
Yeah, I think the one
he's better than Trae Young?
I think he's better than Trae Young. I know Trae Young had the playoff run, but that was a couple years ago now, and they haven't won since. So I think he is better than Trae Young right now.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think Tyrese Halliburton, besides Dame, is the second best point guard in the Eastern Conference, and I would say he's probably top 5 point guard in the league. I'd probably slate him at 4th.
Would you put him over? Okay, so what are your top 5?
My top 5 point guards, going on a little tangent I see here. I would probably say my top 5 goes Curry, Dame, Alexander from the Thunder, and then 4 I'd say Tyrese. I mean, I don't really see any other point guard that is better than Tyrese Halliburton.
You putting him over Ja right now?
Yeah.
Would you put him over Chris Paul?
Oh, what? Yes.
Yeah, Chris Paul.
I'd put a lot of guys over Chris Paul.
I put a lot of guys over Chris Paul, too.
Maybe Chris Paul 10 years ago, no, but Chris Paul in 2023, yes.
Kyrie right now? You put him over Kyrie right now?
Yes.
Would you put him over Luka?
Luka's not a point guard.
I guess now he's not. He was before Kyrie got there, but I guess now he's not.
I would have never put Luka in a point guard. He kind of is a player that,
he just does everything for the
He does everything. But talking point guards, Luka I would not consider.
I think you can make the argument that Ja might be a little better just because of the winning, but
his defense sucks, though.
Tyrese
Ja is not good on defense.
Neither
Ja can't get it straight off the court. If Ja could get it straight off the court and not be shooting guns and stuff like that. I mean, let's just be honest. If he can really figure it out, Ja's a very talented player, but he needs to really fix all his stuff, and hopefully, I believe he will, and I
hope so too. He's a talented guy.
Yeah.
I would put Tyrese right now over Ja. Obviously, that could be a little bit of biased, but ultimately, time will tell. And at the end of the season, we'll look back at this and really see where he'll be slated.
Yeah.
But moving along now to the play-in spots for the Eastern Conference. And at 7, I have the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, a really talented team. I like the Nets squad. Obviously, Bridges probably their star. Claxton as well. Ben Simmons finally returning to form, it looks like, in the preseason. He's not going to be the same guy he was, but he looks pretty solid.
He does.
So the Nets are a really sleeper team. I think are going to mess around and make the playoffs, possibly, at least a play-in at the 7th seed.
My 7th seed is going to be the Knicks. They have a deep squad. With Emmanuel quickly as your 6th man, that's a candidate that's might be win 6th man of the year. We'll talk about those superlatives in a second. But they have a talented starting roster. Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Jalen Brunson. I mean, those are all proven guys that have been in the league for a little bit, and they've proven themselves. And they played well last year, second time around. Obviously, Jalen Brunson just got shipped to New York just a year ago, I believe. So, second year in the offense, second year with the team, building chemistry. I feel like the Knicks could be dangerous.
At 7, I also have the Knicks. Just like Aiden said, that team, it is a pretty solid team. They don't really have a superstar on their team, I would say. I don't think Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle are superstars in this league. But they're both at least all-star caliber players. And if you have 2 of them, almost even 3, because R.J. Barrett isn't bad himself. He has bad moments. He has his slumps like everybody. But when you have 2 to 3 all-star caliber players, that can get you a playoff spot. And we also have a defending center like Mitchell Robinson, and then off the bench, like you said, Emmanuel quickly. I mean, that's a pretty 1 through 7, 1 through 8 team with Josh Hart as well. I think the Knicks will push in that playoff spot at 7.
One of the best 8-man rotations for sure.
Moving along now to a team that is very young, but my 8th seed in the Eastern Conference is going to be the Orlando Magic, a really solid team. They just keep on stacking up draft picks, and they have some really talented players for the Magic. I really like them, and I could say they could even move up to 7 or 6. They have a really talented, obviously, Baquero, a guy who's I think is going to take a next step, averaging 25 this season. And Franz Wagner as well, a guy who, I mean, he can average 25 himself. And they have a bunch of point guards, Marco Fultz, Cole Anthony. I mean, I could name players on them for days on that team. They're really deep. And if Baquero can take that next step, I really like the Magic to make the playoffs this year.
My 8th seed will be the Hawks. Trae Young, Clint Capella, Sadiq Bey just got shipped over to Atlanta this offseason. We're starting to get to the spot in the standings where teams aren't getting as good. But I feel like for an 8 spot, I feel like the Atlanta Hawks are pretty respectable for an 8 spot. You have Trae Young, who's dropping near 30 a game last season. Clint Capella, he'll always be good on offense and defense. They have the pieces. I don't know. I feel like they could slip into the playoffs again this year.
I also have the Hawks at 8 for most of the same reasons that Aiden just listed. They did trade away John Collins.
That is
but
true.
They do have Sadiq Bey to kind of take over that power forward / small forward spot. And Trae Young is still one of the best point guards in the league, not better than Tyrese Halliburton, but he's still one of the best point guards in the league. So I think that the Hawks could make some noise. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't make the playoffs, if they did lose in the play-in, but I have them winning the play-in, their play-in game. But just the roster top to bottom, it's not the deepest team, but they have a nice 1 through 6, I'd say. So, especially with Trae Young still being there and being the playmaker that he is. So that's why I have the Hawks at 8.
All right, now moving along now to the teams that are battling to get in the top 8 in the play-in. I have 9, the Knicks. Obviously, like you said, they're very deep. I think they have 8 players that are really solid on that team. And, I mean, really, you could look at 4 through 12 and really mix and match. But for me, the Knicks are at 9.
For me, my 9 seed will be the Chicago Bulls. I feel like if you put Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, Alex Caruso on the same team, I feel like that's going to be almost hard for them to not compete for a play-in spot. That's a very solid starting 5. Issue with them is they don't really have a point guard. They don't really have someone to bring the ball up on the court, make plays on the offense and in the guard position besides Zach LaVine. And I think that might hurt them a little bit. But when you have superstars, I wouldn't say superstars anymore. When you have stars like DeRozan and LaVine and you have a good stretch 5 in Vucevic, it's going to cause defensive problems for the other team, and I feel like they have too talented of a roster to not put them in the conversation as a play-in team.
Yeah, I have the Bulls at 9 as well. The Bulls are a team for the past 2-3 years that have just barely missed out on the playoffs, and I have them doing it again this year because I don't know what it is anymore. I don't know if it's the coaching, if it's just the players' chemistry, or what it is. It
Lonzo Ball.
It might be because of Lonzo Ball. Maybe Lonzo Ball is the answer to all this, but he's not going to be in here again this year. So I think it will be another year of Bulls losing basketball and not making the playoffs. And I think this is the last year we see the three-headed monster of Vucevic, DeMar DeRozan, and Zach LaVine.
Moving along now to the final play-in spot of the Eastern Conference, I have the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks are a team that, is solid, but they're just solid, and there's nothing really too crazy about them. Trae Young is a good player, but they're just solid. There's just not much to say about the Atlanta Hawks. But go ahead.
For my 10 seed, my last play-in team, I have the Pistons.
Pistons Nation.
Pistons Nation. Yeah, I watched a little bit of their preseason, and they looked good. Asar Thompson, definitely a defensive threat. He will be a lockdown for the whole year. Cade Cunningham looked great in the preseason. Even Killian Hayes was looking up to par, getting out there. He shot pretty well from the field in the preseason. Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart. They have a little 6-7 man good rotation going. So I feel like the Pistons, this is a team that could win 30 games, 20 games, but they could also win, mess around and win 40 games. It's really hard to tell because they're still young and they have to build together. But I'd say Pistons are a 10 seed and definitely keep your eye on them.
So for my 10, I have the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Brooklyn Nets are a team that is very young, off of just almost competing for championships the last couple of years to being a team almost in a rebuild.
Yeah.
But when you have a guy like Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, even guys like Cam Thomas, who doesn't get minutes because he sucks at defense, but he can score a 40 off the bench, Spencer Dinwiddie at point guard, Nick Claxton at center, that's a very solid team. But I don't think that they have the all-around talent to compete in the playoffs. That's why I don't think they'll win the play-in tournament. I think they'll make the play-in tournament, but I don't think that they'll win it. So I think I have them missing out just barely, and that's my 10 seed.
But going now to the teams that I don't think will be in the plan, I think will just be the bottom feeders of the league, 11 through 15. We're going to speed it up a little bit. At 11, I have the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, they have a lot of good players. DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball going to miss time, possibly, most likely the whole season. Vucevic just got signed to an extension, which makes zero sense. He doesn't fit the scheme of the Bulls. Zach LaVine, a guy who's going to give you 26 every night, but it just doesn't lead to wins. The Bulls at 11 for me.
For my 11, it's going to be the Nets. This is a team that's very good. Mikal Bridges, Ben Simmons, Nick Claxton, they have a good roster, but it's a new team, and I feel like they're just going to suffer a few growing pains this year. They're hard to put your money on, so that's why I have them missing out.
I love out the Orlando Magic, who I do think will be competitive. I think they'll just miss the play-in, but that's a young team who are maybe 1 or 2 more years away from really competing in the NBA. So I have them at 11 just because of how young they are and inexperienced.
All right, moving along, number 12 for me, I'm going to have the Toronto Raptors, a team that added Grady Dick in the offseason. They have a few solid players, obviously Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and all that, but just none of those names really move the needle for me. OG Anunoby, the guy who's on an expiring. They have a solid team. They could bounce around and mess around and make the playoffs, but I see them looking on the outside in coming playoff time.
My 12, I'm going to have the Wizards. I feel like Jordan Poole coming to Washington will be good for them. If we look last year, Mikal Bridges coming into Brooklyn as a lone star, I guess, he played well, and Jordan Poole played pretty good in the preseason. Kyle Kuzma looks good. They have good role players. It's just the depth of their roster. I think Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma will both take very big jumps, but it's just an issue for me that they're just not deep. They'll be fine. Obviously, they're not going to make the play in. I have them at 12.
For my 12, I have the Detroit Pistons. Same reason I have the Magic this low. Just inexperienced, young talent, first, second year guys. Kay Cunningham was coming off a season-ending injury last year. He's got to work his way back. They do have a new coach in Monty Williams, who I do think will change the culture there. But I still think that they're still maybe a year away, learning new systems, stuff like that. So I have them at 12.
Moving along to number 13, I have the Washington Wizards. And the Wizards are a funny little team, to say the least. I don't think the Wizards are going to be that good this year.
They won't.
Jordan Poole is a guy who's probably going to mess around and average 28, but he's going to shoot 28 times a game. And, just maybe I'm wrong about Jordan Poole, but I'm not a big Jordan Poole fan. Kyle Kuzma is a guy who I do think is pretty solid. I think Kuzma takes a big step, possibly into all-star-esque tier this season. But for me, the Wizards still bottom feeder of the league, I think, 13.
For my 13, I'm going to have the Magic, wildly different from Jackson. I don't know. I feel like they're still such a young team, and yes, they have Paulo. Yes, they have Suggs. They just re-signed Cole Anthony, which, I don't know. I feel like the extension of Cole Anthony doesn't really make much sense to me, but I don't know. Maybe it would be a good move for them. I still think Cole Anthony should make a nice jump this year, but I don't know. Inexperience, not too deep of a roster. I don't think the Magic will do much this year.
For my 13, I have the Washington Wizards. Same reasons that Jackson was stating earlier. It's just a very mid-team. They really don't have anybody that really excites me other than Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. I mean, your starting center is Daniel Gafford. Your starting point guard is Tyus Jones.
So they're bad.
So I don't think that they'll really compete this year. Even though I do think it will be a fun season to watch. I don't think they'll be a boring team because of Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. But in terms of skill level, I think that they're a little bit below the teams that I have before them.
In my 14th seed, I'm going to go with the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, you guys have them higher than I do. And it's just an experience, I think. And so I guess we'll have to see with them. They're a young team. They could mess around and win 40 games like you said. But ultimately, I guess we'll see. That's my 14.
For my 14, I'm going to have the Toronto Raptors. Again, they added Grady Dick. Great move. And for number 14, my number 14 will be the Raptors. Again, just a young, inexperienced team. They pick up Grady Dick, great draft pick. They have what's his name? Gary Trent? Gary Trent Jr. Precious Achiuwa will grab, I don't know, like a smooth 10 boards a game. Again, just inexperience, lack of depth, lack of star power will really hurt this team.
At 14, I have the Hornets, who are the most dysfunctional team in the NBA. Kai Jones, Miles Bridges.
Kai Jones ain't there anymore.
I know, but he was there, and he got affected by the Hornets curse, which is to be absolutely terrible off the court. So, yeah. They have LaMelo Ball still. Outside of LaMelo Ball, Gordon Hayward's not putting up points, so I have the Hornets at 14.
And my final seed in the Eastern Conference is going to be the Charlotte Hornets.
Yay.
This team, I don't think is that good. Who knows what they're going to do off the court? They're just a curse, like you said. So, 15 Hornets.
My 15 will also be the Hornets as well. They have LaMelo Ball, but not anything else. They have Gordon Hayward, but Gordon Hayward is old, not the same player he was with Utah or anything like that. Hornets probably might be the worst team in the league this year.
And at 15, I have the Raptors because I just don't see them they don't have any kind of star power. Well, they do have Pascal Siakam, but I still don't think that this roster has what it takes outside of Pascal Siakam. Scotty Barnes is good, but he's not going to put you up 15 to 20 points a game.
Yeah.
So outside of those two and OG Anunoby, the roster is just not that good. So that's why I have him at 15.
Moving along to the Western Conference. First 15 seeds in the Western Conference. Obviously, we'll start with the first 8 and then move along to the last 9 through 15. But my first number 1 seed in the Western Conference is going to be the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, reigning, defending champions of the NBA. The Nuggets, they look good. Obviously, I would say they're kind of a team that's probably, going to relax a little bit in the regular season. They're still absolutely loaded. They lost Bruce Brown to the Pacers. But other than that, they're the same team, and they're really good. I think Porter Jr., MPJ is going to take another step as well. I could see him averaging 20 this season. So I'm going to say the Nuggets are my 1 seed in the West.
My 1 seed will be the Suns. They just have too much star power to really count them out. They have probably the best starting lineup in the league. It's hard to debate against them. I do have a little small feeling that they will have something similar to the Nets situation with Harden and Kyrie and KD, where they're going to face some injuries here and there, and they're not going to really be able to play with each other too much. But when they do, they will win, and it's just really hard to count against that roster.
For my number 1 seed, I'm going to a little bit of a sleeper here. I got the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the Los Angeles Lakers probably had the best offseason in the NBA this offseason. And, you still have LeBron, still a top 10 player. Anthony Davis, still top 10 player. And the whole roster you have around them is full of shooters, defenders, which that's all LeBron needs to win a championship. So I think the Lakers, if they can stay healthy, if LeBron and AD can stay healthy, they could easily be the 1 seed in the West.
We all have different 1 seeds. That's cool.
All right, my number 2 seed is going to be the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm a team that I think just improved this offseason. They're a team that I think they're going to try to get one more for LeBron. Year 21 LeBron. It seems like LeBron has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder going into this season. I'll talk about him in the awards as well. So I'm going to say the Lakers are my 2 seed.
For my 2 seed, I'm going to say the Nuggets. As Jackson said, reigning champions. Jamal Murray's coming back. You have Jokic. You have MPJ. You have great pieces around them. I think the Nuggets overall have one of the best rosters in the league, and it's hard to count them out.
I also have the Nuggets at 2, just because they just won the championship last season. Yeah, they lost Bruce Brown. But other than that, they come back with the exact same roster. Jokic is still the best player in the league, arguably.
Yeah.
Best center in the league, definitely. And I don't think you can count them out, so that's why I have them at 2.
All right, moving along to my 3 seed, I'm going to take the Phoenix Suns. The Suns, obviously, like you said, star power. But the real question is, can they stay on the court? Kevin Durant's a guy who I don't believe has played over 45 games in an NBA regular season in a long time. Bradley Beal's a guy who gets hurt sometimes as well. Obviously, I think Devin Booker is most likely going to be in there all season. Depth is something that's kind of questionable with this team. So ultimately, I think time will tell. But the Suns are a team that, if they're fully healthy, are going to be very good. But health is the big question mark with this team.
My 3 seed is going to be the Lakers. Like Jalen said, you have two players in the top 10. It's hard to be a bad team with those players. Have good shooters, like you said, Austin Reeves, other players like that, good defenders. I mean, LeBron has the pieces around him. I just think their roster is a little bit worse than the other 2 teams I have above them. But, yeah, I mean, it's the Lakers, it's LeBron. He'll always compete.
And for my 3, I have the Suns. Just like Jackson said, I know the starting 5 is probably the best in the league. But outside of the first 5, the bench is kind of lacking. They have good role players, but I wouldn't say they have any kind of definitive scorer off the bench. So that's why I have the Suns at 3.
Moving along now to my 4 seed, I'm going to say the OKC Thunder. And I know that's also very surprising. My 4 seeds are very surprising, you could say, but bold take. But I'm going to say the OKC Thunder. They're a team that I think is absolutely loaded. I think they're a dynasty waiting to happen. Really, I mean, they're absolutely loaded on defense. They have really good defenders, obviously. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a guy who's going to give you 30 every night. Chet Holmgren, a guy who's I think is going to be up there in Rookie of the Year. We'll talk about that soon. But the Thunder, this team is absolutely loaded. They just keep on getting better. They have so many draft picks. If a star comes available, the Thunder, if they're good this year, they could trade for them. So that's something to watch. The Thunder, very talented team. I could see them. They're going to make the playoffs this year. I think they're finally going to push for that instead of tank. But anywhere between 4 and 8, I think the Thunder are going to be up there. But I say the Thunder are going to be the 4th seed this season.
For my 4th seed, I'll have the Warriors. Steph, Clay, Draymond Green, Kevin Looney's been proven to
solidify. And Chris Paul.
And Chris Paul, I know. Kevin Looney's solidified himself in this scheme that Steve Kerr runs. Chris Paul, like you said, great piece. They have good bench players. Yeah, I feel like the Warriors could fluctuate anywhere between 2 and 5, but I'll have them at 4.
And for my number 4, I have the Sacramento Kings, who I think they were a top 3 seed last year. Top 4 seed last year. And just coming off that, which basically the same roster, second year under Mike Brown, I think that this team will compete again just like they did last year, maybe even go deeper than they did last year with second year in the system. So, yeah, I have the Kings at 4.
And so my 5th seed in the Western Conference, I'm going to take the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers, a team that obviously has had so much hope, and really just kind of injuries have derailed their seasons back to back seasons. This year, it's the first really training camp that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have both been healthy for. If the Clippers are healthy, I think they can compete for the 1 seed in the West. I'm going to put them at 5. Injuries is the biggest question mark for this team. But if they can stay healthy, they have Kawhi Leonard, who's a top 10 player in the league. Paul George, who's a fringe top 15 player in the league. They have role players. They have a good team. I'm going to say the Clippers at 5.
For my 5, I'll have the Sacramento Kings. Great pieces. De'Aaron Fox, one of the better point guards in the league. They just have a great role team. Like you said, they don't really have any superstars, but they're just so consistently good, 1 through 15, that they will compete. Domantas Sabonis has proven himself as a star in this league, which we didn't really see early in his career. He really started peaking with the Pacers, and with the Kings, he's taken a whole new level. So this Kings team will be hard to battle with come game time.
And for my number 5, I have the Warriors, who I think are still one of the best teams in the West. I think it's a slightly older roster. Obviously, you just added Chris Paul and traded away Jordan Poole. That gave away a little bit of your future right there, but to win now. But I do think Chris Paul gives them a better chance to win now than Jordan Poole. And you still have a whole bunch of young guys on your bench. But, when you have the best point guard in the league, Steph Curry still, at age 35, he's still hungry. He's still good. He wants to win another ring, and I can see them winning another ring this season.
Moving along to number 6, I'm going to take the Golden State Warriors, a team that traded away Jordan Poole, added a veteran in Chris Paul. Stephen Curry is still going to be Stephen Curry. He's going to give you 30 almost every night. But I put him at 6 because this team, I just don't know. They could mess around and be a really good team. They could also mess around and be not that good. Who knows what Draymond Green we're getting next year. Klay Thompson looked to slow down last season in the playoffs. There's a lot of question marks around this team. I think Chris Paul helps them. I think they're going to be the 6th seed, but ultimately, time will tell with this aging Golden State Warriors team.
For my 6, I have the Clippers, the LA Clippers. I'm just going to keep this short and sweet. Like Jackson said, the injury bug has hurt them the last couple years. But if Kawhi and Paul George can stay healthy, if they can return back to their form a couple years ago, they will be good. I can see them being a top 5 seed. But hey, if the injury bug hits them again, they might not even make the playoffs. So, yeah, that's why I have them at the 6.
And for my number 6, I also have the Clippers, just like the other two said. Injury bug, inconsistency on the court. For the players being on the court. When they're on the court, they're good, but it's just inconsistent play in terms of injuries. So that's why I have the Clippers at 6.
Moving along to number 7, I have the Sacramento Kings. And, the West is so loaded. The Kings have such a good team. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, 2 really solid players. Keegan Murray, another guy who's really popped off in the playoffs. Summer League, he was giving you 40 bombs. He was going crazy. But, the West is so good. I really don't know if I can put them over any of the top 6 teams. So, the Kings at 7.
For my 7, I'm going to have the Thunder. They have probably the best young starting lineup in the league, but that's the issue, is that they're young. They will make the playoffs this year. They have a good roster. They have Shea. They have Chet coming back from a season-ending injury. They have finished second in Rookie of the Year voting Jalen Williams. They have Josh Giddey. They have Isaiah Joe. They have the pieces, but I feel like inexperience and youth is just going to get to this team. So they'll be good, but they'll be 7 just because I just feel like they're still a little inexperienced.
And for my number 7, I have the Mavs. Now, I think this could be a make-or-break year for Luka Doncic in terms of him staying with the Mavs long term. I think if the Mavs can make a playoff run, he'll probably want to stay. But I don't know what the mind of Luka looks like right now. But if he keeps on losing in early rounds, I don't know if he can sustain that and want to stay with the Mavericks. So I have the Mavericks at 7.
Going to my 8th seed, I'm going to have the Memphis Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies are going to be without Ja Morant for the first 25 games of the season, which I think hinders them a lot. I think they start out rough. They still have a really good player, Jared Jackson Jr., holding down the middle. Steven Adams, a guy who barely played for him last year, not going to play this year at all. He's going to be out for the year. Just a couple days ago, I saw that. So the Grizzlies, a team that traded for Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart, I think, is an upgrade over Dillon Brooks. But I still, in this tough West, with Ja Morant missing the first 25 games, 8 seeds probably their ceiling. I mean, who knows? Maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. as a number one option is insane, and we don't even know about it. But as it looks right now, before the season starts, I'm going to have the Grizzlies at 8.
For my 8 seed, I'm going to have the Dallas Mavericks. Now, they have 2 very good, proven players in the league. They have Luka. They have Kyrie. But outside of those 2 players, who do they have? Josh Green, Christian Wood. Tim Hardaway Jr.
Tim Hardaway Jr. still there.
Like, those are not good players. Those are not starting lineup caliber players that would get you a playoff run. Will they make the playoffs? Yeah. I mean, they have Luka. They have Kyrie. This team made it with Luka without Christian Wood, and what they had when they had Jalen Brunson. Obviously, you upgrade Jalen Brunson to Kyrie and you add Christian Wood. This team will make the playoffs, but who knows how far their run will go, because I don't know. I just feel like their roster is probably the most shallow roster in the league.
For my number 8, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma City, their team is just so young, but it also has such a bright future. If Chet can prove why he should have been picked so high, if he can come in and dominate, if Shea can average 30 again like he did last year, Josh Giddey be great on defense, Lou Dort be great on defense. This is a scary team, and I think they'll show that this season with the rebuild finally coming into fruition.
Moving now to the 9th seed, I'm going to take the Dallas Mavericks, a team that re-signed Kyrie Irving. But overall, they still don't really have that much of a team. Their bench is, I would say, weak. Luka Doncic is going to put the team on the back with Kyrie, and who knows, a year with Kyrie and Luka could be magical, but I just don't think it will be with this competitive West. I keep on saying it over and over again, but the West is absolutely stacked. The league has never had this much talent, 1 to 15 on both conferences. I mean, you could look at the bottom of the East and the bottom of the West, and they can move up all the way to a 5th seed. There's not much parity in the league, which is a good thing. But for now, the Mavs are my 9th seed.
For my 9th seed, I'm going to go with the Memphis Grizzlies. Like you said, Steven Adams out for the year. Ja Morant is going to miss a third of the season, a fourth of the season. I just don't know. I feel like a team led by Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't going to go anywhere. Now, don't get me wrong, Jaren Jackson Jr. can do everything on the court, and Marcus Smart is probably one of the best defending guards in the league. But I don't know, losing Steven Adams and Ja Morant's only going to be there for 60 games. If that, maybe he gets hurt. I don't know. I just feel like this Grizzlies team is kind of not a shoulder to rely on.
I also have the Memphis Grizzlies at 9, just because the same thing my 2 co-hosts said. Ja Morant being out for the first 20, 25 games is really going to hurt them, especially since that's their number 1 scoring option. Now their number 1 option is Jaren Jackson Jr., who averaged almost 20 last year. But I don't know if he can carry the load every night in, night out for this team, especially if he's the number 1 option in the opposing team knows that he's the number 1 option now. So, especially with Steven Adams being out, and then you lose Ja Morant, but you also lose Tyus Jones, who's the best backup point guard in the league. And now Marcus Smart's your starting point guard. But they still do have Desmond Bane. But I don't know. I still think that they barely miss out on the playoffs just because they're going to have a rough start without Ja.
All right, moving along to my 10th seed, the New Orleans Pelicans. And the Pelicans, a team that I think could be very good this season. I think Zion Williamson coming back and averaging a 26 and 8. I could see the Pelicans moving up and maybe in the 6th, 5th seed. But right now, the 10th seed, because I really don't know. They have a lot to prove this season, but they have a lot of good pieces. They're my 10th seed.
For my 10th seed, I'm going to go with Victor Wembanyama and his Spurs. It's going to be hard to really stop Victor this year. We saw him in the summer league. He was all right, but preseason he really showed us what he was made of. I mean, he's blocking 3-pointers with ease. He's getting to the basket in 2 steps. He's going to be unstoppable. He's going to be a matchup nightmare. They have good pieces around them with Jeremy Sohan and other role players. Is the starting lineup the best? No. But I feel like they will come together and gain some chemistry over the year.
For my number 10, I have the T-Wolves, who I think this is Anthony Edwards' star season. This is going to be the season. I mean, he made the All-Star game last season, but I think he'll have an even better season this year. I think that he officially takes takes over as the best player on the T-Wolves, away from Karl-Anthony Towns this season. And outside of Anthony Edwards and Cat, the roster's just not that competitive. I mean, Rudy Gobert, yeah. And they do have Jared Vanderbilt, but other than that, I just don't see the T-Wolves competing that much for a playoff spot.
My 11th seed, obviously 11th through 15 teams that aren't in the play-in. They're just they're on the outside looking in, as I once said before. But my 11th seed is going to be the T-Wolves. Like you just mentioned, Anthony Edwards, a guy all-star last season, takes over as the top dog. I think that will happen. If the Wolves can get rolling, let's say they're fully healthy and they can figure out the Cat and Gobert combo, I think there'll be a solid team and possibly a playoff team. But if I don't think Gobert and Cat works together, I don't think it ever will. And, if that doesn't work, they're going to be a really slow team, and that's not really leading to wins in the year 2023. So I'll have the Wolves 11.
With my 11, I'll also have the Wolves. Outside of Anthony Edwards and Cat, as Jalen said, there's really not much there. Jared Vanderbilt, Rudy Gobert. I mean, Rudy Gobert is a guy who's been on the decline ever since he got shipped to Minnesota. Was he a top 5 center in the league in Utah? Absolutely. I mean, he won back-to-back Defensive Player of the Years. But in Minnesota, he's just not good. The scheme that they play, this 2-center thing between him and Cat just won't work out. And I feel like that's going to cause more problems for the Wolves than people think, which is why I have them missing out on the play-in.
And for my number 11, I have the New Orleans Pelicans. I think that Zion comes back stronger than ever, but I still don't think it's enough. I still think that this team is still a couple of pieces away from really competing in the playoffs. I mean, in the NBA, in the Western Conference, especially with how stacked it is. I think they just don't have the pieces to jump above any of the teams that I named before them. So I have the Pelicans at 11.
Moving out of the 12th seed, I'm going to take the Utah Jazz. Larry Markkinen, the guy who made a big step as a star player last season. Colin Sexton, another talented player. This Jazz team, they look good. They're not bad. I think they're a pretty solid team. Ultimately, time will tell how they do, but playoffs not looking likely for the Jazz.
My 12 will also be the Jazz. I mean, like you said, Colin Sexton, Walker Kessler, a player that's pretty good. But again, I feel like they could. I mean, yeah, they could mess around and make the play-in. Will they compete? Probably not. I don't know. I feel like this roster is too shallow to really move the needle.
And for my 12, I have the San Antonio Spurs. Aiden said earlier, Victor Wembanyama looks very good. And I think that he will carry the offensive load. But other than him, Devin Vassell, and Jeremy Sohan, the roster is just not that good. I mean, your sixth man is Doug McDermott.
Pacers legend.
Dougie McBuckets.
Bulls legend.
But other than that, I just don't see the Spurs really competing this season. I think they're a couple more pieces away.
Yeah, my 13 is the Spurs as well. The Spurs are a really talented team. I think they have a lot of hope, but I think they're probably 2 years away from really competing in this Western Conference. Maybe Victor's him. Maybe he's that guy. He leads them to a playoff spot. Will that happen? It's unlikely. We're going to see some growing pains. I mean, we could see an injury. I mean, ultimately time will tell. So right now I have the Spurs at 13.
For my 13, I'll have the Pelicans. Zion. Really, Jalen looks like...
that was kind of... For the Pelicans to be 13, that's kind of low.
I know, it is. But this West is so stacked. Like, okay, the 1 through 10 could really go anywhere, and especially like the lower teams, like 11 through 15, that could be a toss-up too. So I'm just going to put the Pelicans here just because they've been so inconsistent, I feel like, over the past couple years. They haven't really shown anything to me that's really caught my eye. Nothing too impressive, so I'll keep them at 13. But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they move to like 10. So only time will tell.
And for my 13, I have the Utah Jazz. Larry Markkinen is a special player. Walker Kessler's good. After that, your next best player is Colin Sexton. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't think Colin Sexton, as my second best scorer, is going to win me games.
No.
So, I mean, he's good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if he can put up the numbers that will get you into the play-in spot. Laurie Markkinen, though, we'll have another probably all-star season again, but I just have the Jazz at 13.
Moving along to 14, I have the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets, a team that I think could do better this season. Jalen Green, and obviously got one of the Thompson twins as well over there. Which one is it?
Amen.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's going to be fun to mix them up all the time. But yeah, the Rockets, I still think they're just a few years away. I mean, they're still young. I mean, they're just the Rockets. They don't play any defense. I mean, you kind of got to play defense to win games in this league.
Yeah.
You might be able to score 120, but the other team's going to score 140. I mean, just the Rockets at 14.
For my 14, I'll have the Blazers. They made a couple actually pretty good moves this offseason. Scoot Henderson gets added. They have Shaden Sharp. They bring in DeAndre Ayton. I mean, this is a solid team. For a 14 seed, they're a pretty good team. I'll have them at 14 just because this is almost a brand new team, and it's going to take a minute for them to get that chemistry and to get things moving. But for right now, I'm just going to have the Blazers at 14 just because of just how new this team is with each other.
And for my 14, I have the Houston Rockets just like Jackson, and it's just a very young team. I mean, everybody on your starting five, I'm pretty sure is under the age of 25. So, I mean, Jalen Green.
Just a very young team.
Jabari Smith.
Amon Thompson.
But I do think they did get the steal of the draft with Cam Whitmore. I do think he can average 20 out the gate in his rookie season if he gets the minutes. But outside of that, I think the Rockets just don't have the experience. So that's why I'm at 14.
And then finally, my final seed in the Western Conference, a team that I don't know if it will always be here, but as it looks right now, I'm just going to put them here because you kind of got to place them somewhere. The Portland Trail Blazers, a team that traded Damian Lillard just a few weeks ago. They have a really, honestly, a decent team. I could put them on, honestly, all the way up to 8. I mean, they have guys, obviously, if Scoot Henderson comes out and is the real deal, I mean, that's just, and you got other solid players as well. But for right now, I'm going to say the 15th seed because just the uncertainty with Scoot and just this team being so young and having a quick change going from Dame to now not having Dame. So ultimately, we'll see. But for right now, the Blazers at 15.
For my 15, I'm going to have the Houston Rockets. Now, 3-4 years from now, this starting lineup could be the best in the league. I mean, you have Şengün, you have Amon Thompson, you have
Jabari Smith?
Jabari Smith, you have, oh my gosh, wait, I'm blanking. Not Cam Whitmore.
Well, he is on that team.
He is on the team.
I know he is.
Who you talking
who's
about?
their starting point guard? Wait, I'm
blanking.
blanking.
It's Amon Thompson.
Wait,
Thompson or Jalen Green?
Jalen Green.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
Yeah. I blanked on that name. But like 4 years from now, I mean, they grow together. They improve with each other. I mean, it could be one of the best starting lineups in the league. But for right now, I just feel like they're too young. Their future is there. Don't get me wrong. But as of right now, in 2023, this team is just too young to compete. But the future is definitely there, and I'll definitely keep an eye on them this season.
All right, yeah. So we're going to move along to the NBA award favorites. So all of us have selected an MVP, a Rookie of the Year, a Sixth Man of the Year, the Most Improved Player, and a Defensive Player of the Year. So I'm just going to get right into it and say my MVP is going to be LeBron James. LeBron James is a guy who has looked good, obviously. 21 years pro, the best ever. I would say my GOAT. But LeBron James, there's now a regulation rule that you have to play 65 games in a season to win MVP. LeBron hasn't done that since 2019. We're now in the year 2023, by the way. So if LeBron can stay healthy, he's a guy who last season averaged 29 points per game, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, only 55 games last year. But I think LeBron has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He has a little bit to prove because, I mean, he's a guy who obviously won in the bubble but hasn't really done much with the Lakers. Obviously going to the Western Conference Finals, leading that team, that turnaround team, because they were really bad last year in the regular season. But I think we're going to have a little bit of vintage LeBron this season. So MVP LeBron James.
For my MVP, this player is just too good to really put down. I know there's such thing as voter fatigue. If we're looking at who the best player is in the MVP, it is Nikola Jokic. If voter fatigue wasn't a thing, this dude would win MVP every year. Like, really. Like, I feel like he is a step above Joel Embiid, and Embiid won the MVP last year, as we all know. But if we're looking solely off who is the best player of this season, I feel like voter fatigue shouldn't even be a thing, and I think Jokic is clearly the best player in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah. For my MVP, I'm going a little bit off the rails real quick. I'm gonna go. I know Jackson picked LeBron. I'm gonna go with his running mate, Anthony Day-to-Day Davis.
What?
Anthony
What in the world?
Day-to-Day Davis. I think this is the year where Anthony Davis finally takes the reins from LeBron. Finally tells LeBron that he can sit down and let him cook. And I think Anthony Davis can do that if he can play 65 games. Which I think that he might do it this year. He might. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But if he does, I think he can be in the MVP conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it, but I mean, it really just depends. Can these guys play 65 games? This is such an important thing now in the rules because you could have a guy averaging 80 points per game, but he only plays 40 games. I mean, you're not eligible for MVP, so that's going to be something that's going to ultimately, hopefully, lead stars to play more games.
As his name says, Anthony Day-to-Day Davis.
Well, we'll see if he can stay upright and stay off the ground. But moving along, Rookie of the Year, I'm going to say Chet Holmgren. And obviously, Chet Holmgren drafted 2 years ago but did not play last season, so that was basically his redshirt rookie season if you want to look at it like that. But I think Chet Holmgren will have a better year than Wemby. I don't really know if Wemby will play too much this season. I don't know. I could see him getting hurt. But I'm going to be a little different. Say Chet Holmgren, a guy who I would say he's been in the league. He's seen what the league is for the last year, basically on the bench. So my Rookie of the Year is going to be Chet Holmgren.
My Rookie of the Year, I mean, I would go different if I could, but I'm gonna say Chet as well. I mean, he's been in an NBA locker room. He's been on an NBA bench for a year now. He's familiar with the season, with the team he is in. Coaches, just because he's out doesn't mean he's still learning about the league. I feel like Chet Holmgren will probably be better than Victor, just because I feel like there's a history of people that are Wemby's height that get hurt, and I feel like Chet is going to have a great year.
And for my Rookie of the Year, I've got to go with Wemby. I mean, what he was doing during the preseason was just otherworldly. He made other men look like boys out there. If he can stay healthy, he can continue to do that throughout the season. I think there's no way, especially with the hype that he has, that he doesn't win Rookie of the Year.
And now I'm going to move on to Sixth Man of the Year, and my guy is going to be Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield's a guy who started most games last season for the Indiana Pacers, but Buddy Hield's a guy who last season only averaged around 17 points per game, but 17 points per game off the bench would be impressive. I think he can get up to about 20 off the bench. Buddy Hield's just a sniper from three, probably top three-point shooter in the league. So Buddy Hield coming off the bench for the Pacers, especially if they're winning games, he's going to be a guy that's definitely going to be in the name for Sixth Man of the Year.
For my sixth man, I'm going to have Emmanuel quickly. I feel like if he didn't have R.J. Barrett and Jalen Brunson starting ahead of him, I feel like he could be a starter on probably 20 out of the 29 other teams in the league. This is a Knicks team that will win. They will compete. They probably will make the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs, they will make the play-in. Quickly is a guy who can come off the bench and give you very good numbers, as we saw last year. He's a very good player. So for that reason, I'm going to have Quickly as my sixth man.
We're going to keep on the tradition of picking, a couple of not underknown, but people you might not have on your radar for these awards. I'm going to go with Jonathan Kuminga.
Wow.
I think
Day-to-Day Davis, and now Jonathan Kuminga.
Jonathan Kuminga. I think Jonathan Kuminga has the ability, he has the skill to be a 15-point per game scorer with great defense and can also average you some rebounds. So I think that he can really, if they can expand him and give him more minutes off that bench, I think that he can do that. So that's why I have him as my sixth man of the year.
Now moving along to Most Improved Player of the Year. And I'm going to say Josh Giddey for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Josh Giddey last season averaged 16 points per game, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 32% from 3. Really solid all around. But I think he's going to take the next step. I think he can get to a 28-8 type of season, shooting about 35% from 3. If the Thunder take a jump that I expect them to, I think Giddey's going to be the lead to that since he is their point guard. So I expect Josh Giddey to be the most improved player.
Now, for my most improved player, we've only had 4 episodes of this show, but I feel like this is already the hottest take of Roll the Tape history. For my most improved player of the 2023-24 season, give me the man that wears number 7 for the blue and red, Killian Hayes.
Oh, my.
Killian Hayes. This is a guy who's improved a lot over the offseason, looked great in preseason. This Pistons offense will elevate, and I feel like he will elevate with it. It's a rough take, but hey, if stuff does turn around for him and he has a good year, I'll look like a genius, so I'll take the risk.
That's not going to happen.
That's crazy.
I'm riding with Killian Hayes. Let's
Saying
go.
that with a straight face is insane. But
Anyway.
anyway,
That was not with a straight face, trust me.
anyway, my most improved player coming out of Indiana is Obi Toppin. I think Obi Toppin is a guy that was underutilized in New York. I mean, this is a guy, I saw the stats the other day. This guy averaged 20 a game whenever he started and got the starter-type minutes for the New York Knicks. He just got, obviously, they still have Julius Randle that was in front of him, so he wasn't going to play power forward in front of Julius Randle, obviously. But now he has the chance to play with the best transition player with Tyrese Halliburton. And the Lob City is coming to Indiana. And y'all better be ready for it because it's on the way.
Lob City, Indiana.
Lob City, Indiana.
On the way. But finally, the final award we're going to cover, Defensive Player of the Year. And Deploy. And I'm going to say the Cleveland Cavaliers power forward Evan Mobley, a guy who was obviously on the defensive team last season. He averages 9 rebounds a game, 1.5 blocks, and a steal. I think if Evan Mobley can average 2 blocks, 1.5 steals, I think he's going to be up there for Defensive Player of the Year. So I'm going to take Evan Mobley.
For my Defensive Player of the Year for this upcoming NBA season, this guy is so good on defense, and, I mean, he's definitely on your radar because he won it last year. Jaren Jackson Jr., he is just too good to not consider for this award. He averaged 3 blocks a game last year, unheard of. That is prime Rudy Gobert numbers right there. And I feel like if Rudy Gobert could go back-to-back with those numbers, I think so can JJJ, so that's why I have him here.
Staying on the tradition of...
God. Okay, I said Killian Hayes. I can't lie.
You did say Killian Hayes, but staying on my tradition of players I think that will win these awards or have a chance to win these awards, I'm going to go with Walker Kessler out of the Utah Jazz.
That's a good pick.
Now, Walker Kessler, he was very good last season. I mean, he was so good that he got I think he made all-rookie first team. I think it was either first or second. But this was a guy that nobody thought that would become a starter, more or less a really good big in his first season. And he was putting up great defensive numbers, and he even caught a couple lobs and had some finishes in there. So I really think that he can get to that Defensive Player of the Year status. If not this year, definitely next year.
Yeah, but that's basically going to round out the NBA awards. NBA season starts Tuesday, October 24th. Obviously, we're going to be hearing this on Thursday, October 26th, but
it's tonight for us.
And we'll talk about it next week. So NBA is officially back. But as we hop into the final segment of the day, we're going to switch back to the NFL. 3 games of the week for NFL Week 8. Let's get right into it. The Rams taking on the Cowboys. The Rams 3-4 on this one, and the Cowboys 4-2. And I'm going to say this is going to be a really good game. I think the Dallas Cowboys get back on track, and they beat the Rams and move to 5-2.
I agree. I feel like the Cowboys will win this game. The Rams are a team that just lost to the Steelers at home. Now, don't get me wrong. The Steelers did play a great game, but I don't know. The Cowboys are looking good. And they're starting to get back on track, like you said, Jackson. So give me the Cowboys to advance to 5-2 on the year.
I agree. I think the Cowboys will win.
And now moving along now to a really good game. The Cincinnati Bengals taking on the San Francisco 49ers. 2 teams that have Super Bowl hopes, to say the least. The Bengals 3-3 going into this one, coming out of a bye. The Niners have lost 2 straight, now 5-2. I do think the Niners get back on track and beat the Bengals, but the Bengals, a team coming off a bye, they've had a week to prepare. Definitely could see it going either way, but I will take the 49ers to improve to 6-2.
I don't know. For me, I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals. They're on a 2-game win streak. They're coming off a bye. And if we're looking right now, the 49ers, Brock Purdy's playing bad. The whole team is playing bad. They're on a 2-game losing streak. Christian McCaffrey is suffering from an injury. Yes, it is the 49ers, but the Bengals are on the up. And as we saw last year, once they're on the up, they will never go back down. So give me the Cincinnati Bengals in this one.
I'm also picking the Cincinnati Bengals to win this one. I just think that they are on a roll, and 49ers have lost 2 straight, so I don't know. Could be seeing the unraveling of the 49ers.
And finally, our final game of the week for NFL Week 8 is the Cleveland Browns at 4-2 taking on the 4-2 Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. The Browns have had 2 consecutive really tough wins versus the Niners and the Colts. And the Seahawks, a team that is still just a really solid all-around team. And this one, I'm going to take the Seahawks. They've been rolling. Kenneth Walker has been playing good on the ground. The receivers are finally looking to come into their own. And Geno Smith still hasn't wrote back. So I'm going to take the Seahawks in this one.
I'll take the Seahawks as well. The Browns are, yes, they're coming off 2 wins, but in one of those games, the defense was the story, and in one of those games, the offense was the story. They're still yet to figure out their consistency, really, their strengths. The Seahawks have, and they have for a while now. This is almost the exact team that the Seahawks had last year. They've built chemistry. They're 4-2 right now. I mean, I would say not many people expected them to have a record above 500 at this point in the year, given their schedule. But, I mean, I think it's hard to count out the Seahawks in this one. I think the Seahawks get the dub here and improve to 5-2.
I'm going to go with the Seahawks as well, especially if Deshaun Watson plays next week. I don't believe in Deshaun Watson to come out and win this game. I think they have to rely on maybe the run game in this game because the Seahawks do have really good DBs. So, and I don't trust Deshaun Watson, especially after his performance last week. Before he got injured, he looked terrible against the Colts. So I'm going to have to pick the Seahawks to win this one.
Yeah, so that was the final 3 games of the week. In our final segment of the day, fantasy football. Starts and sits. We'll get right into it. I'm going to say start Nico Collins, the Texans wide receiver. The Texans coming off a bye. Nico Collins has looked very good this season. C.J. Stroud looks like a top 20 quarterback only as a rookie. They play the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers also coming off a bye, but the Panthers not that good. They haven't won a game this season, 0-6. So I'm going to say start Nico Collins.
My start for the week will be Darren Waller. I mean, this is a guy who dropped 23 points last week. This offense is starting to elevate a little bit. We're seeing that. They're starting to utilize Darren Waller a little bit more, as we saw last week against the Commanders. He's on the up. I feel like the Giants as a team are on the up. I feel like it's hard to sit Darren Waller in Week 8 of the NFL.
And for my start of the week, I have Lamar Jackson. Now, he just had his best game of the season last week against the Detroit Lions. And this week, he plays the Arizona Cardinals, who give up one of the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So I'm going to say start Lamar Jackson.
All right, I have 2 benches, but I'll guess first. My first bench is going to be running back Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's a guy who has struggled this season, to say the least. He's had some good games, but he's also struggled some. Atlanta is actually second against running backs in fantasy so far this season. The Falcons have a really good run defense. Obviously, if you're in a league where if you're in an 18, 16-person league where Derrick Henry, I mean, obviously you need to start him. He's your good running back. But if you're in one of those 8-man leagues, those 10-man leagues, and you can afford and you have good running backs on your bench to replace Derrick Henry, at least put Derrick Henry in maybe a slot position, but having Derrick Henry be your running back, I would probably say bench him versus Atlanta because ultimately, I mean, I think he'll struggle. But my other bench is going to be Tyler Lockett versus Cleveland. Cleveland is the best team versus fantasy receivers, and Tyler Lockett took really a backseat role last week for the Seahawks. Lockett's still probably the receiver 1 on that team. Well, the receiver 2 besides DK Metcalf. But other guys are emerging, so I would say bench Tyler Lockett.
My sit for this week will be Josh Jacobs, and I know everyone is going to be like, oh my gosh, Josh Jacobs, that's a huge name right there, leading rusher in the NFL last year. But what has he proven this year? I mean, He's had one, maybe 2 games above 20 points. But other than that, he just scored 5 points against a Bears defense who allows some of the most points to running backs. And Josh Jacobs hasn't proved anything this year. I wouldn't say he's a big name in fantasy football anymore. I feel like if you have a good replacement, I would say replace him. But as Jackson said, if it's like a 16, 18, maybe even 14-man league, I would say start him. But, I mean, if you're in an 8, 10-man league, I would say try to find a replacement.
And for my sit of the week, I have Kenneth Walker. He plays the Browns this week. The Browns have the best run defense in the league, even though they let up a lot of run points last week to the Colts. The Colts have a pretty solid O-line. It's better than the Seahawks O-line. So I don't think that Kenneth Walker gets that same type of yards against the Browns. So I say sit Kenneth Walker.
But that's going to wrap up today's podcast. A little bit longer than normal. Yep. Usually we aim to go an hour, but obviously we went through 1 through 15 in the NBA, getting ready for the NBA season. So this is a little bit of a special episode, you could say. Apologies for not getting an episode out last week. Had a little bit of technical difficulties and scheduling conflicts, but we plan on being every Thursday here on out. But thanks for joining us, as always. Follow us on all social medias, Roll the Tape Pods, TikToks, Instagram Reels. Anything you see will be coming out as we make new episodes every single week. But thanks for joining us, and that's all. And that's been Roll the Tape.
Yes,
Until
sir.
next time.
See you.